Stay true to yourself. Try to make decisions as you go forward in life that are true to you. Listen to your body. Your body knows, really listen. And I think the more you make decisions that are aligned with your inner world, the more your outer world becomes aligned with your inner one.
Hello and welcome to the Mum Means Business podcast, where we shine a light on inspiring women who have one thing in common. When they're not managing tantrums, homework, PE kits and play dates, they are busting their gut to create something from nothing, to turn their passion into a thriving business and build a better life for themselves and their families. We dig into what motivates devoted mothers to pursue entrepreneurship and how they integrate their work and family life. I'm Victoria Phipps, your host, and if you're an ambitious mum in need of some solidarity whilst navigating the messy middle of making your big dream a reality, then stick around. This is for you. My guest today is a trauma-informed somatic coach, brainspotting practitioner and certified hypnotherapist who helps women and men heal from the inside out. Blending neuroscience, nervous system regulation, and deep emotional work, she supports clients to overcome anxiety, self-doubt, people-pleasing, and emotional trauma so they can reconnect with who they truly are. Ruth Edwards is also a single mum of 2 teenagers and former corporate professional who now runs a growing online business, helping others heal what's been holding them back and build lives rooted in self-worth, safety, and purpose. Hers is a story of starting again. She made the decision to pursue a heart-led career, which helps others achieve their full potential and gives her the flexibility to be present with her children. But I know there is so much detail to dig into. So Ruth, welcome to the Mum Means Business podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So you're in a relatively young business. Let's start with the decision to make that shift in your working life. What made you do it?
Well, first and foremost, I started my business because I wanted to help people in a way that I wished I'd had support myself. So I discovered somatic healing, and we can talk a little bit about that, what that actually is, and, brain spotting therapy and nervous system work. And it's completely changed how I navigate my life. That was what made me choose to do this and actually help people in a way that I didn't have that help myself. I wish to goodness I'd had all this stuff, years earlier. So that's in short, like my why. But actually, in terms of the sequence of events, there was a lot of divine timing involved, really, because as you say, I'd had this long corporate career working for a large bank for 23 years. And actually, it got to a point where redundancy was coming up. So I chose to take that. I saw that actually as an opportunity to allow me to go on and do something different. But also at that point in my life, I'd become a single parent and things had changed in terms of the landscape. So we'd had COVID, but then we were very much used to working from home. I'd moved from the north down to Shrewsbury. So was actually, working from home, being very flexible. But then things changed. We had to go back to the offices. But actually, I was now having to travel 2 hours, well, actually up to 3 hours each day to sit somewhere where I didn't actually have any of my team around me. And it just felt soul destroying. And also being a single parent, we were navigating that aftermath of becoming a different family. And I really wanted to be there for my children and to be much more flexible in my work. So that was a big driver for why I wanted to change things.
So did you always, you worked in a bank, which is, historically a very safe, secure job, going back to Jobs for Life. You'd had this long career at Lloyd's. During that time, did you ever have an inkling that you might want to do something entrepreneurial? Or was it literally circumstance, timing, just that synchronicity of events that sparked that thought for you?
It's an interesting question because actually I think there's a few things at play. I think as I came into my 40s, I began to think about my life and just everything very differently. And when you think about the fact that culturally we're very much conditioned to follow a traditional path, aren't we? You know, it's school, college, university for a lot of us, and then a corporate career, which is very, very safe. And it's all about being able to have a mortgage and the car and the family and everything. You know, I followed that path, but I think more and more into my 40s, I was starting to feel that actually my outer world doesn't align with my inner one. Whilst I'm so grateful for that corporate career and all the skills it's taught me, actually, you know, I was starting to feel that I wanted more freedom and not to have that control. You know, you can only take this set amount of leave each year. And, you know, I just felt I'm wanting to do something that was much more soul and heart led, I would say.
Is that thing about, you know, almost having to put your hand up in school and ask to go to the toilet? You know, you put your hand up in work, say, could I please go on holiday? And it's definitely quite constraining. And I have rebelled against that my whole adult life. And I've been very fortunate that when I have worked in a company, it's been our family business. So all sorts of flexibility. And that was built into my childhood because I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. There were probably more working hours in there than for most, but they were fitted in around the things that we wanted to do as a family. And it's that flexibility. And I think there's something about, it sounds like you perhaps felt the same way. I hit 40 earlier this year, and it's that halfway mark. You know, you're like, if I'm lucky, I make it to 80. That'd be nice. Anything after that feels like a bonus. And have I done half the things that I want to do? And what does my life look like? And if I carry on this trajectory, when I retire, will I be pleased? Will I be okay with how my working life went? Do I feel like I have agency? Because also you feel more mature automatically, like 20s and 30s, you know, you're still trying to prove yourself. And there's something about, I mean, for me, turning 40, I was like, oh, I feel like I'm a grown up. Now, I don't know what happened. Like suddenly I became very mature and sophisticated. But you look back and you have actually got 2 decades of working experience plus. And you know stuff. And if you have a word with yourself, say, I have value, and actually maybe I could take a bit more control over where I put my energy.
Yeah.
And it is a moment of reckoning. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, it's a risk, isn't it? It's a big risk. This may not work out, but I felt if I didn't make that decision then, I would never do it. It was the opportunity for me to be able to take that leap. And also as a mum, I think it's so important to model for your children, for them to follow their passions and to not feel constrained by other people's expectations and cultural expectations. I just think that's so important, especially if you've got a child who's not particularly academic. You know, it's really important that doesn't define them. I think that's where success happens as well, if you're following your passions and the things that you are good at.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think perhaps there was something about our upbringing. And I do wonder, my child's about to start school, to what extent the education system's changed. You probably know a lot more about it. But there was kind of a funneling, you know, if you're outside of academia, if that's not where your strengths lie, then they either have to lie in music or sport, maybe drama, but you have to have a thing. And actually, it's so much more complicated than that. And it's that thing of fitting into a box. And if you fell out of that box, it was like, well, you're kind of failing. You know, you're in the lowest group in this subject and you feel all the time that you're not quite cutting it. And actually to show, especially in this modern age and with the digital online world, there's so much opportunity to build a really thriving career that is so niche and is right up your street and lights you up, which is obviously what you're doing now.
Yes.
So, but the one thing I was also going to say is, yes, as a mum, you want to emulate that for your children. You want to show them and you want to make them proud of you as well, which is very cool. But there's also a responsibility about being a single mum that it is a bit of a risk. And how have you reconciled that thing of betting on yourself? How's that been for you?
I would say that is the most challenging part of being self-employed now and taking that leap, is definitely because at the moment We are having to tighten purse strings. And for example, the holiday we went on this summer was to my parents' caravan in Wales, and making different choices in the short term, but with the hope that it will pay off. But I think, I'm new in I have to give it a chance. And actually that holiday in my parents' caravan was actually wonderful.
Yeah, I bet.
There was limited Wi-Fi, so we really connected. Like, we swam in the sea together, and it was just actually, I would say we had a better. It was more connected than the 5-star all-inclusive the year before in Turkey. Money isn't everything. And actually, it's experiences, isn't it? I think there's so much more to life than financial success. So what is success? Well, actually, for me, I'm measuring my success differently than just purely financial. Yes, we have to be sensible. Yes, I have to have a roof over their head. But yeah, I think that's the key difference, is how I even measure my success. It's more than just money, isn't it?
So what is it? If you look forward, say 5-10 years, obviously what you'll be doing is you'll be taking your children, who will be in their 20s then, to the Maldives on a, 5-star extraordinary holiday, and they'll be wishing they were at their grandparents' caravan. But in 5 years' time, assuming your business continues to grow, what does that success look like to you?
I think it's more about freedom, isn't it? It's about having that flexibility, perhaps being able to have my business, but actually, take them to different places. I think it's freedom, flexibility, and really showing them what's possible.
Absolutely. And how did they feel about it? Because your children are 13 and 15. That's a big change for them.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously at a time when their family dynamic has changed dramatically as well. How do they feel about you? When you were making that decision, did you have conversations with them about it?
Yeah, I did. I was telling them all about it, and they were like, Mom, go for it. You'll be so good. You'll be good at this. And yeah, they were very, very supportive.
That's lovely.
And even now, they'll ask me, have you got any new clients? How is it go? They're very interested in what's happening. And
I think that's gorgeous. And I think the fact that they are coming along on the journey with you, and they're old enough to understand, that as a child, we just think of our parents as infallible, don't we? To a certain extent, depending on our childhood and those experiences, they're grown up, so they know stuff, and we just entrust ourselves to them, for better or worse. But I think there is something about those teenage years where you start to get to know your parent as a contemporary almost, and they're not just mum. And so you can share a bit more of your own vulnerability with them. And I think that's going to be so brilliant for them to see that you were perhaps nervous to take this big leap and again, invest in yourself when you've had this really, really safe, secure, kind of institutionalized career to date.
Yeah.
And they get to see that you were nervous, but you just went and did it anyway. I think that's really cool. Very, very cool.
Thank
so
you.
Tell me, why somatic healing? And for anybody that doesn't know, what is it? Let's start at the very beginning. And what's your journey with it?
Yes. Okay. So somatic actually means in the body. So when we've experienced any kind of overwhelming event, so we'll say the word trauma, some people might say they don't have any trauma, but actually I would argue that everyone does, because we've all experienced events in our lives, even the loss of a pet, that's trauma. And if we couldn't process things properly at the time, our body holds on to so much, it stores it, and our subconscious. So even though we might logically be able to rationalize something, actually, if we haven't processed it properly, we'll continue to get triggered by things, and it affects how we show up. It affects our patterns, and it really affects how we go through our life. A lot of things happen when we're children, growing up, secondary school. I had a really difficult secondary school experience, and that really shaped how I went into adult life. Very low self-esteem, low confidence, and I've had things happen during my life. For example, baby loss. I lost a baby at 17 weeks.
I'm sorry.
Due to Edwards syndrome, which was a really difficult experience. I was 40 at that time. And there's been other things, the divorce, the breakup. That's, we need to heal from that. So I was looking for ways to heal, and I've had counselling over the years. I'm open to say I've used antidepressants, but I just never found the thing until I discovered somatic healing. For me, that's the difference, and that is about bringing in the body. The mind-body connection is so key, and it's about processing what's been stored. There's that phrase, isn't there? We need to feel it to heal it. And so as I discovered brain spotting therapy.
And what's that?
So brain spotting therapy is a really powerful way of processing past trauma, and we use an eye position, but it's connected to what we're feeling in the body. So you might be describing something that's happened, and I might say to you, well, Victoria, what do you notice in your body? And you might say, oh, I can really feel a lot of sensation here in my chest. I'll use a pointer.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not, we'll find a position with your eyes where you'll actually feel those sensations stronger. And then it's a case of holding that eye position. So we'll find that spot and then holding the eye position at the same time as listening to specially created music. It's a different frequency. 432 hertz, which is a healing frequency, and it also stimulates both parts of the brain, so it moves bilaterally. So listening to the music, holding the eye position, and then the client just notices what's coming up, where those sensations go. So some clients might have a very physical process. They might say, oh, it's gone from my chest now, it's gone into my jaw or into the back of my head. Or they might have new memories come up. But the beauty is they don't need to even talk if they don't want to. They don't need to tell me an awful lot. And the key thing is the body knows, it's got an innate capacity to heal. It knows what needs to be released. So it's that opportunity to do that and timestamp events in the past. So it's no longer holding on to what's happened. You're safe now. You're in the present day. It creates much more of a sense of inner peace, resolution, I would say, in a nutshell. It's a bit of a long-winded explanation. It's not much of a nutshell. It's complicated to explain.
No, I think it's really interesting. And what you said about the body having an innate capacity to heal. If you cut yourself, and with young children, I'm trying to explain this all to them now, they get very excited if they cut themselves.
Because of the plasters.
Because of the plasters. Is it going to be Elsa or Anna or Olaf plaster? Very exciting. But, your body will physically heal itself, and it will do that without any effort on your part. But then you come to the mind. Do you think there's something about the way modern society is? And I'm going to say particularly for women, but I think for men as well in another way, in that they've been conditioned not to show weakness. But I'll focus on women because that's the point of this podcast. Because we're busying ourselves. Yeah. And I don't say that in a derogatory way. I am the worst for busying myself. Because we are taking on the responsibility of supporting so many people around us, we distract. So actually, we very infrequently make time to connect with our body. And for a lot of women, it will be just exercise, as in like, I'm going for a run, or I'm going to, it's, unless you're really heavily into something that is more mindful in its practice, you're not really listening to your body very much. And I think at that middle stage of life where you are so in demand from children, and you're pushing yourself in your career, and then you have perhaps parents who are getting older, and you start to get a bit sandwiched in that respect. There isn't much time. And it also comes back to self-care, that you set aside that time to actually check in with yourself. But do you think when it comes to emotional trauma, actually the body is sometimes screaming at us to address something, and we just keep battering it away because we've become so detached from our physical bodies?
Absolutely. And there's been a statistic recently that 80% of autoimmune disease is in women.
Yeah, I've heard that. And we have a lot of autoimmune disease in our family. I think Gabor Mate has done quite a lot around this because I think he recognised that his wife actually was suffering for many years in these kind
Yeah.
of low-lying ways, you know, just not quite supported enough, and
Yes.
giving, always giving, and
Yeah.
actually being reluctant to receive help,
Mm.
you know, superwoman.
Yeah. And if we're storing so much and just pushing on, then all of that cortisol that's been pumping around the body, you know, we're in our sympathetic part of our nervous system. So that's when we're in fight or flight. And all that cortisol, if we're in that space for such a long period of time, that's what leads to these conditions, you know, fibromyalgia, for example. And so, yeah, so I think nervous system education and regulation, again, that forms quite a big part of my work with my clients, because actually it's very much looking at where they are in their nervous system, mapping where they are, you know, and a lot of clients, a lot of us in society, we're in fight, flight, which is sympathetic, or we're in freeze. You know, and that's where we do feel quite dissociated, disconnected. It might look like we're functioning, but actually behind the scenes, we're quite disconnected. So it's about recognizing that and what tools we can put in place to help regulate and move into a place of groundedness and connection. And again, I would say, as a parent, that's been brilliant knowledge, but also as a business owner, you know, and for other business owners listening, thinking about where you are operating from. You know, are you in fight flight all the time? And what can you do to regulate more and come into what we would call ventral vagal, is the scientific term, or your green light, or come back online. But yeah, ventral vagal.
It's to do with your vagus nerve.
Yes. So it's the
Okay.
parasympathetic part of your nervous system. And yes, your vagus nerve plays such a important role in moving you in and out of these three states. We need all of them, but we want to be in ventral vagal as much as possible. So it's about creating that nervous system flexibility. I call yellow sympathetic, red is when we're in freeze. It's a bit like a traffic light system, and green is when we move back into our ventral vagal place.
And is that kind of a settled space?
Yes, that's when we feel grounded, connected. And I think that's where we access more true self energy. I love internal family systems theory, which is Richard Schwartz. I don't know whether you've come across that, but
I heard it years ago on Dr. Chatterjee's podcast, and it sounded really interesting.
it's phenomenal. And again, I think it really helps. It's helped me. It's helped other clients understand themselves better when we're in true self. And he says that every one of us has access to these wonderful qualities. He calls them the 8 C's. So it's when we're calm, we're connected, we're curious, we're confident, courageous, we're creative. Those are all qualities that, again, as business owners, as parents, if we're in that place, if we can access more of that true self energy, we're going to be leading from a much better position, aren't we? And again, we're going to be parenting better. I would say this nervous system work, learning how to regulate better, noticing when I'm triggered, has made me a better parent. So for example, if I'm triggered now, it makes me more reflective. The reason I'm triggered is not necessarily what they've done. It might be because I'm not feeling in control. Therefore, I don't feel like I'm a good enough parent. That it goes back to a core wound. Again, that's internal family systems theory. So actually, it's then what can I do to regulate better and wait until we're all back online. We're not in fight flight. We can speak more logically and rationally than when we're coming from a sympathetic
stress,
part.
I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And do you think part of your teaching then, once you've done kind of your healing work, and that will be individual to every client that you have, part of it is a kind of training, and similar, I suppose, to a way a traditional therapist might do the same thing, is to notice your triggers and to actually dissect your own behavior a bit more, so that you're approaching day-to-day life in just a more aware and perhaps a more sophisticated mindset.
Yeah. One of the things that is a really useful tool that I do with my clients is actually get them to track their triggers for a week. So we'll look at what the situation was, but what image came in their mind when they were triggered, what came up in terms of behavior, what emotion came up. but also what meaning. So what story were they telling themselves right at that moment? That can be so insightful, because then we can look at, well, actually, is that story true? Is that true? Or is that story from 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Or is that internal? Or is
Yes,
it
or is it
external?
from something? Yes, exactly. And then we can take each element. So, for example, that story, and we can reframe that, or we can take that behavior and put a pause in, and that's where the nervous system regulation tools come in. So when they're noticing what's coming up for them, they put a pause, regulate, put that pause in to change that trigger and that behavior. So yeah, it's a really useful, reflective way of looking at things and being able to then break those patterns.
And how does it feel when you're at work now and you're speaking with a client and you can tell that you're making really good progress and that you're adding value and that your knowledge, because you've invested in yourself with all of this training, the information you're giving them and the process you're guiding them through is really going to help them, and you can see it happening. And you think back to 2 or 3 years ago in your previous job.
Yeah.
How does it feel to be doing that?
Yeah. Just worlds apart. I feel so much gratitude, that I am in this position where I am. Actually, I'm making a difference. That I don't want that to sound conceited, but I am making a difference to people.
It doesn't sound conceited at all. It doesn't at all. And I think gratitude's an interesting word because you did it. It's not something that someone handed to you and said, okay, well, you've got this job. Would you like to do this instead? It's all laid out for you. There's so much work that goes into establishing a business from nothing. So much work. You've been in an institution and you probably got quite comfortable there. You were very proficient. You were arguably a big fish in a small pond in your kind of department. You've been there so long. You had so much experience. You take yourself out of that and you're in a whole new world that you know almost nothing about. You're grappling with marketing yourself. How is that?
Yeah. Well, that, I'm not going to lie, that has been a little journey. I think at first I found it really difficult being visible. That fear of being judged, getting to grips. When I used to do a reel, I used to feel like I used to have to go and lie down in a dark room afterwards for about 2 hours once I'd posted it, thinking, how is it going to be received? But I have completely got over that now. And I think the thing that I tell myself is, the reason I'm doing that is to share my knowledge, and it is to reach other people, and if they're not my audience, if they don't like what I'm saying, they don't have to watch me, do they?
Exactly. I think in those early days, learning to market yourself is a real hurdle, is a real challenge, because it feels so personal. I think especially if you're a service provider and, people must have identified you as working at the bank. For years, that was just part of who you were. You were in this corporate role, and suddenly you're on Instagram talking about this woo-woo thing that no one knows about. And do you even know about it? And what she thinks she's doing? And all those thoughts go through your mind. And it's totally natural and human. But I think to get to the point where you say you are at now so quickly in a fairly young business is amazing, because it's massive to grapple with those things. Your audience on social media at the time was likely friends and family. And suddenly you just change it up. And you have to outsource that responsibility. I'm not here to entertain you. I'm actually going to do something that really matters to me. And if you don't like it, please feel free to unsubscribe from my digital life.
Yes,
and that's fine.
exactly.
And that's up to you. You do that. If you are cool, feel free to support me and like everything that I publish, even if you don't understand it. It's that. And I think actually to have got to that stage so quickly is brilliant. And
thank you.
Especially if you were hiding in a dark room.
I wasn't literally, but that's what I felt like. But but again, and actually noticing, I think that's another thing, because of my knowledge around the nervous system, noticing how much adrenaline was in my body the minute I pressed post, and actually noticing it and regulating, and again, using some of those tools.
Yeah, and it's madness that, I mean, these are evolutionary tools that were designed to galvanize us to run away from danger.
Yes.
So we
Yes.
are having the same stress response that we would have if a lion was chasing us, but actually we've just posted an Instagram reel. And your body doesn't know the difference. It doesn't know the difference, but it's those signals that your mind is sending to your body. And we obviously live in a very different world, and happily there aren't lions chasing us. But that quantity of adrenaline and cortisol has a massive effect on everything that day, you know, and to learn how to recover from that is obviously hard work in itself. And a lot of people, as you say, won't really have the tools to do that. And I think for a lot of people, it will stop them doing that reel again. And so what do you say to other women who are mothers and are perhaps thinking that they could start a business, or perhaps in the early stages, but they feel frightened to death of posting a reel, nervous, and they have all that anxiety over judgment from friends and family? And will they just think I'm a complete tosser if I start talking to my phone? All of that stuff. What do you say to them?
I think the important thing is to think about why you are doing it. And actually, you know, the people that you need to reach, think about them. Don't think about your friends and your family. It's your purpose, isn't it? It's what your purpose is. And if you don't reach those people, what the downside of that for them is. You know, I think that's the first thing. Then I think, you know, practically actually taking that leap. Once you do it and you do it again, you realize you're not going to get eaten by that lion. You know, I was also worried about accuracy, what I was saying. You know, I was worried people might say, well, that's not right. Because again, from a corporate career, we had to be so careful about what we put out. So, but yes, you will find that actually people, you know, they do comment. They want you to do well. Most people want you to do well. And then third thing would be actually using some tools, some nervous system regulation tools to help yourself regulate and bring yourself back into that calm state. It's those practical things. And then my other tip around the whole social media aspect would be, I have only just started using Meta Business Suite. Now, this is a practical, I don't know whether it's helpful for new business owners, but if I had started that sooner, I think I'd be even further now. You know,
this is for scheduling your posts.
Scheduling your posts. This summer, I've decided, right, I'm going to use it, and I've used it so that I've been able to post while I've been on holiday, and it's meant that I've stayed consistent, and I've actually seen my views to my Instagram double, you know, and it makes the whole process of actually posting, the way that you even do your caption, it's dead easy, you know. So if you've not done that yet, I would strongly recommend that in terms of ease and consistency. I wish I'd done it so much sooner.
Yeah, it's that thing again of freedom.
Yeah.
So if we want to post content daily, do we actually want to be on our phone at that time of day daily? You know, stressing. And often, you know, you'd post in the morning or maybe the evening. As a parent, they're your crunch times, you know. That's, if you've got smaller children, you know, that's dinner, bath, bed, and that's getting them out of the house in the morning. And it's stress at all angles. You know, do you want your kids to see you on your phone? Do you want to be saying, you know, shouting, put your shoes on whilst you're trying to publish a post or write a caption? It's a really helpful tip. And you can set aside time when it suits you in your working week to actually think about your messaging. And I think I went through a phase of posting daily on Instagram for a very, very long time. And if you do it as a sort of discipline, but without thought, you know, you hold yourself to the discipline, you can end up just putting out some quite lackluster content. And much better to post less frequently and set aside the time to really think about the message that you're trying to put across, and that will land a lot better. So I'm glad that you've found a way to do it that suits you and suits your family life.
Yeah, and it even tells you when to schedule when your audience is most active, both for Instagram and Facebook. So it definitely helps.
Do you feel that getting your head around the tech and the tools of marketing a small business in 2025 has been a bit of a learning curve in itself.
Yes, absolutely. Because even though, I've worked in corporate life, so you understand all the different elements of a business to a degree, because you've seen all the, the way a business works. It's totally different when you're in on your own, and, you have to become the designer on Canva. I didn't even know what Canva was.
Yeah.
It's all these different apps, isn't it? And it's like a foreign language, some of it, like lead magnets, funnels, all of this stuff. It's just, it's so alien to me. And I'm still getting my head around that, to be honest. But that's where I need to go next in terms of how do I grow my business? What do I look at next? Is it memberships? Is it courses? How do I make sure I've got different products that people who couldn't afford to do a one-to-one, for example, could still access something? But also, how do I ensure a more steady income? Because it's not consistent in terms of clients. So yeah, that's where I need to go next in terms of creating more stability. But with that does come that technical, like you say, half of the battle is how to understand what to even do.
Yeah.
That's the one bit I miss. Is sometimes I feel really alone. I miss, if I know what I need to do, I'll get on and do it. And I think that's the hard thing, isn't it? It's not having that accountability necessarily. So it's now about how I use my network, using coaching groups and things like that to be able to get those skills and that support through community, isn't it?
I think this is exactly it. That so many mums start their own businesses. And one of the factors will be to have a more flexible life and to have more freedom and agency over their schedule so they can be there for their kids. You feel like you're doing it on your own. And you kind of take this big plunge, which is enormous in itself. And then you've been used to having someone hold your hand pretty much your whole life and tell you what's next, because all the way through school, it's like that. Your parents do that when you're younger. And if you go to university or college or whatever, and then you're in your job, you've got a boss, you've got a team leader, you've got a manager, whatever it might be, and you're guided. And I think to come out of that sort of situation in the middle part of your life, I can imagine it feels like you're just lost at sea sometimes. And that makes it all the more impressive because you don't feel like that and go and get your job back.
Yeah.
Because you have faith in yourself that you're going to figure it out. And actually, it's that thing of asking for help because you've got this amazing cause and purpose and this dream for a different sort of life. And all the passion is there. And I think there's a risk in those very early days, if you don't have support, that it's too much and it feels too scary and you go backwards.
Yeah.
And to have the tenacity to push forwards and actually to put your pride to one side and say, well, I need help, and put your hand up again. And it's not putting your hand up, can I please go on holiday? It's putting your hand up and say, I'm not really sure what to do now. And you've obviously done very well in that you've got clients and you've got all this one-to-one work and you're marketing yourself and you're doing all the reels and you're doing all the things. But it's natural to think, okay, well, how do I scale it? Like what's next? What is it? And the opportunities in the online world now are vast. And you'll hear people talking about all these options. You should definitely start a membership. You should definitely do a course, and you should definitely, and none of it is definite. And it's exactly coming back to what you do. Everyone is going to have a path that's right for them in the work that you do. And so for you, it's just about having somebody guide you in the direction that suits you and your business. It's very exciting, isn't it?
Very excited.
You look a bit scared. I think it's very exciting.
It is exciting.
There's so much you could do, and you're only at the beginning, and you're doing all the right things, in that you are like doing all your research and asking for support, and the world's your oyster to a certain degree. And I think what you're doing now, you're obviously offering people a transition one-to-one. You're working with clients individually, but you have an opportunity to offer that transition one-to-many, where you are able to serve many more people and scale your business in a way that you can support people without having to completely erode your time. So tell me a bit more about that transition. So when people engage in somatic healing, what can they expect in that journey? Where does it take them from and to? And in your journey, where did you start and where did it take you?
Yeah. So I tried different things like counselling, but that's top down, and the danger is we can rewire things in. So when I discovered the somatic work, it was just like it unlocked something for me. It enabled me to find much more inner peace and resolve things in a way that I couldn't logically. But also, I think with the internal family systems therapy that I mentioned, that again is about understanding some of the different parts of us that come up. So, for example, we might have a people-pleasing part, we might have an emotional eating part, or an alcohol part, or a self-sabotaging part. And understanding that those parts are actually there for us with a love and intention, but actually they can be quite destructive. So I think for me, part of all of that work helped me understand myself so much better and to reduce shame about some of those parts that were coming up. But as I say, then combined with brain spotting therapy, it's hard to articulate how powerful it is, but it's that, months later you might find actually that thing, I can look back on that thing without the same emotional intensity. And I think the person I was, very low self-confidence, very anxious, a worrier, I wasn't meeting my potential really. And I think the difference in me is significant. I had brain spotting on not being able to speak. I used to be so scared of speaking publicly, and really, I mean, to come on this podcast, I was a bit nervous. That's normal, isn't it? But I think prior to having that therapy, I don't think I could have done this with you. I honestly don't think I could.
Which is such a shame because your message is important.
Mm-hmm.
And there could be, even if it's just one person listening who has felt really, really stuck.
Yeah.
And has perhaps been to therapy, is perhaps on antidepressants, and nothing's landing, nothing's making it better. Because these things are addressing symptoms, the malaise. They're not necessarily going to the root source of a problem, which is, I guess, what somatic healing is all about.
Yeah.
Identifying where that comes from, where that pain point is, and going back and addressing that. And they might just hear you speak about it and explain the opportunity. And it might just be the thing that they choose to invest in that sorts them out and allows them to break free from those constraints that have been holding them back. And it's hard I've always loved the sound of my own voice. So I can't relate. And my parents, God bless them, will testify to that. But I do appreciate that is rare. And I still obviously would have huge anxiety speaking to an enormous group of people. But to get over that and to find out that source for you, like where does that come from, that resistance, and to heal it to the point where you can share this message is brilliant. So what was it like when you first discovered somatic healing, and who is it that kind of helped you through that initial journey to overcome your challenges so that you've been able to go on and do all these fabulous things? Well,
I was, how you scroll on Instagram, you look at all sorts of different things, don't you? But it was actually a woman late at night. No. But it was actually a woman called Caroline Strawson, and she has set up her own school of trauma-informed positive psychology. And it was her that I went on to do, I think it's actually the world's first qualification, trauma-informed coaching certification that's accredited with the International Coaching Federation. So It's a really good qualification. So that's where I actually did my studying with her. And at the point at which I went self-employed, I actually bought a franchise in Caroline's mental wellbeing company. And that was really helpful because it allowed me, it was almost like a business in a box. So I was able to get the back office system as part of that. So all of that setup that can be quite difficult when you first set up, but it allows me to still have my one-to-one coaching business under my own brand. But I'm also able, through the franchise, if I want to go in and deliver trauma-informed courses, workshops to schools and workplaces, which I've done a number of. My passion is the one-to-one work, but I do have that opportunity as well.
I imagine that's quite interesting, going into schools and talking about that stuff. And it does just give you, I don't know, a bit of a glimmer of hope that actually perhaps the education system is starting to embrace some new ways of thinking.
Yeah.
And with everything that you have learned and the journey that you've been through as a mum as well, and navigating family dynamics, what would you now go back and say to your 8-year-old self?
I would say to not make yourself small, to follow your passions. Oh, this is making me upset. Oh, I don't know why that's brought emotion.
I think 8 years old is quite a funny age, because you're a child on the cusp of some serious conditioning, but you probably still have a really strong sense of self. You're starting to become more aware of societal expectations and perhaps less free than you felt when you were 7 or 6.
Yeah. I would say to her to not care what other people think of you, to really try and stay true to yourself. Try to make decisions as you go forward in life that are true to you. Listen to your body. Listen, your body knows, really listen. And I think the more you make decisions that are aligned with your inner world, the more your outer world becomes aligned with your inner one.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's really powerful, because as we grow up, inevitably we feel just tribally a need to conform and to be accepted and to fit in. And in that, there is always a risk of losing what makes us us and what makes us unique. And I think the wonderful thing about starting a business in your 40s is that you've almost come out of the other side of that period in life where you really feel this burning urge to conform and fit in, because you've had that conversation with yourself where, maybe you are halfway through, maybe you're over halfway through. And there's a certain amount of, well, sod it. I'm going to live my life according to my own values and pursue my own version of success, not the one in the rule book that I was handed as an 8-year-old girl. And that's a really, really lovely feeling to have. And I feel like I'm just getting into that myself. And I've loved this conversation. I've learned something. I probably need some somatic healing, so maybe we'll talk about that. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I'm sure people listening will get so much out of this. And I wish you all the success as you scale your business.
Thank you so much.
Invite me to the Maldives in 5 years' time.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. The idea of leaving the safety of a career you've built for decades and starting a new business in your 40s can feel so daunting. We might wonder if it's too late. Have we missed the boat? Ruth's story says no. Ruth's story says if you're craving more freedom in your life and you have an idea niggling away at you, then you are worthy of pursuing that heart-led business at any stage of life. Her own experiences led her to stumble upon a healing process that helped her so much, she felt compelled to find a way to help more people reap the same benefits. She could have ignored that call and found another corporate job. Many would probably advise that that was the prudent thing to do, but instead she decided to seize the moment and bet on herself. Now she's in charge of her own destiny, and regardless of the outcome, she'll never regret taking that chance, and I'm not in the least bit surprised that her kids are so proud of their mum. Thank you so much for being here. I know your time is precious, and I appreciate you tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast, because we want as many mums as possible to find us and join in the conversation. If you have thoughts, questions, love letters, or even hate mail, please send them my way. I read every single message. For more resources and episode show notes, please visit our website at mummeansbusinesspodcast.com and find us on Instagram at mummeansbusinesspodcast for behind-the-scenes content and updates. Until next time, I'm wishing you only good things in life and business, and I will speak to you soon.